Welcome to Have That Dreaded Conversation Before Christmas. So, for folks who are watching the recording, it's now the 10th of December, which means I'll give you 15 days to practice, or 14. And I guess the first question I'll ask for a couple of folks to chime in. Like, why are you here to help me talk about these issues and to make sure you get what you want out of it? What do you want to get out of this masterclass? You can be as general or as specific as you would like. I wonder if Jim, if you would be willing to go first.
Uh, a couple of things. One, very specific. I have a relative who has developed some very bad habits. They, they have to do with honesty and integrity. And I would like to be able to be in a position to perhaps guide him along a better path.
Mm,
That's one of my reasons. The other is branching out, excuse me, branching out. I would like to be more aware of or develop better skills, interpersonal relationships where perhaps you disagree with someone and there's a better chance than punch them in the face.
all right. Thank you. Yeah. So this is definitely not a punch him in the face workshop.
That was my impression.
And Mama Kai.
Yeah. For me, I wanna learn if I'm ready to have that dreaded conversation.
Uh huh.
I'm here to gain skills so that as I am approaching there's one particular person I have in mind, but also just to have the skill in general, especially as a parent coach and seeing things, we don't really learn how to approach people when you see things that might be harmful to children and it's not always welcome. And so I'm wondering if there's space in what you're sharing that I can use that would help open the doors to conversations like that.
Beautiful. So this is as a parent coach, you're talking about people who have engaged with you to help them parent better?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
more
Okay,
like,
good. So you don't even have permission to say anything.
and so I want to open the door if possible, one. And then for people that I do know that may not realize that what they're doing and are not necessarily looking for feedback because most people think that what they're doing is good. And no shame, no blame, but to just see if I can take this skill to open the door to conversations that might be uncomfortable. And
Mm,
parenting is always a conversation that's uncomfortable. People like mind your business in a hot minute. So that's what I'm looking for and a way to open the door to addressing that. And then I think in the future, some of the more vulnerable communities that have highly unregulated nervous systems being able to share things in a way that invites their feedback.
yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. That helps me a lot. So I will open up the presentation. So the first question I want to throw out is like, why do we procrastinate? Instead of dreaded conversations, I'm calling like really important. So obviously we procrastinate out of some sort of dread or fear or anticipation or predict. And kind of go into that a little bit. If it is a dreaded conversation or one that you are reluctant to have or are putting off, what are some of the reasons that you're procrastinating it? Mama Kai, want to jump in for that one first?
Yeah, it is. For me, it's always the reaction. What is the reaction going to be? And also from that, what will my reaction be versus what can I do to invite a response so that I can respond back? But what if that person's nervous system is triggered and then it triggers mine? If the relationship is already in a precarious state, will I further dismantle it if I'm not fully prepared for whatever backlash I might receive?
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Jim, do you have anything to add about in terms of procrastination?
But can't go Molokai pretty well. Yeah, what can happen? But my question to myself in this particular instance is questions are Is this any of my business? Why should I care? What
Mhm.
am I going to benefit personally, or how am I going to be able to help this individual? Or can I help this individual in this situation? And I guess again, if he's going down this road, then he must want to go down this road.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a few things. One is like fearing the other person's reaction. That particular case of someone just turning their hostility on us because we stepped in to help in some way, and then how that's going to make us feel. And for me, if I'm trying to help someone and they get hostile towards me, that feels a lot less worse than if they get sad or if they collapse or drop into guilt or shame. Like to me, that's okay. You can fight. At least you're angry. Then, but if I've hurt your feelings, like that for me, that's much worse. And I think all of us are different in terms of what pushes our buttons and what makes what we interpret as I am a bad person. I've done a bad thing. I've hurt somebody else. But ultimately, this all comes down to we don't want to feel a certain way. And and we predict that the way they're going to respond is going to make us feel some kind of way we don't want to. And then we have the practical aspects of, first of all, is this any of my business? Do I have the authority, the right, the power to enact change? Can I help? Is a question about do I have any possibility of influence here? And so very often we're like, okay, I'm not going to have this conversation because it's going to make me feel bad, because it's going to make the other person feel bad, and it won't help, and it might make things worse. So if I just avoid this conversation and I stay, and so Jim, it sounds like with his relative, it's someone you're in contact with, and you're going to be able to talk to on some sort of regular basis, whether you bring this up or not. And maybe if you just stay nice, and they end up going down this road and they end up in jail, then they'll listen to you. So it's like I'm going to preserve the relationship at the expense of this conversation that I think might be helpful. Alright. Or and then especially like I don't neither of these cases I think is like what you'd find in a typical workplace. Like somebody's just annoying you, or somebody's just an employee is not pulling their weight, or they're engaging in some sort of iffy behavior, and it's a problem and it's an ongoing problem. And in that case, not having the conversation, or let's say not giving feedback, does nobody any favors because it's damaging the organization, it's damaging the effectiveness. And eventually, what usually happens is some crisis comes up and then it all comes out in the worst possible way, right? Because it's come out against your outer will. It's like the volcano erupts, and at that point, the lava's flowing everywhere, and there's no damage control. Before we get into the presentation, give you four quick disclaimers. The first is, no, what we're going to be doing today is the opening. So I used to play chess, and there are entire books written about just the openings, the first 5 or 6 moves on either side. And you can get, if you don't get good at those, you're not going to be able to learn the middle game and the end game, but it's not the whole thing. So if after I read a book on the mastering the chess openings, I'm still not going to be able to beat somebody who has mastered the middle and the end of the game, but it's going to get me in the game. So this is really about how to make your approach in a way that opens up the other person, but it's not the whole picture. Second thing is this process is not a panacea. And the picture there is ginseng panax, which I discovered this root that's used medicinally throughout Asia, now in the Americas as well. Apparently, people like Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett made most of their money from digging up ginseng. And it was called panax, which means cure all. People thought, and they made it into medicines thinking it was going to cure absolutely everything. And it does a good job. It's a useful herb, but it's not, it doesn't cure everything. And this process is not a panacea. And I've discovered when I do live presentations, when I do this in workplaces, there is always a temptation to think about the worst person in the world that you're struggling with, and immediately say, this isn't going to work for them. And that's possibly true. So I don't want you to think about this process that we're going to work on as, oh, this always works. This is a magic control trick. This is the best odds, and it'll probably work in 70 to 90% of conversations, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the nature of the conversation, right? If you're working in social services and people keep coming in front of you and they don't even want to be there and you're telling them how to run their business, it'll probably be lower. If it's people at work, whereas there's generally a shared mission of some sort and a relationship, it'll work more. But there's no guarantees because there's nothing coercive about this process. Third disclaimer is that history does matter. So when I said this is instead of feedback, we're not going up to people and giving them feedback, but that doesn't mean we're not going to look at what happened in the past. We are going to, with them in a certain way, contextually and strategically explore what did happen, both from their perspective and if relevant to your perspective. Marketing to say feedback doesn't work and this does, it's a little more nuanced. That we are going to look at the past to learn from it, but we're not going to be doing it in the form of, here's what I know. Here's my expert view on what you did. And finally, archery. I tried archery once in summer camp, and like they explained the goal of archery in about 8 seconds. Here's your arrow. There's the circle with the concentric circles on it, the hay bale with the concentric circles on it. Put the arrow into the center of the hay bale. And like it took him about 5 seconds to explain that. All of us, we understood. And there was only one kid in the entire camp who could do it reliably by the end. So it's a very simple formula that I'm sharing, but it's not easy. It's not as hard as archery, but it does require skill and attention. And it doesn't just work on its own. This is a framework for us. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of change theory, just a subset of behavior theory. So this is a kind of a theory of behavior. So in order to do a behavior, you need a couple of things. You need the capability, right? If you have to be able to do it. So if I want to shoot the arrow, I need to be able to shoot the arrow. If you want to plant a garden, you have to know how to plant a garden. But we also, in order to do it, we also need motivation, right? I can do it and I want to do it. And motivation can come intrinsically, like I really enjoy gardening, I enjoy archery. It can come extrinsically in the form of I want to get a paycheck, I don't want to get fired. It can come in the form of coercion and threat in certain cases, right? You'll be sorry if you don't. But when there's capability and motivation, then at the sort of appropriate moment, if there's a trigger for the behavior, so the trigger for shooting the arrow might be going to the archery range, or the trigger for planting the garden might be your burpee catalog arrives in the mail, or the last frost has come and now the temperature's warm enough, or whatever it is. If there's capability and motivation and the appropriate environmental trigger or prompt, you're going to do it. And that's classic behavior theory. But there's another part to it. This is the part that often gets ignored, is safety. So in order to do a behavior, especially if it's a changed behavior, especially if we're talking about change, somebody doing something new, different, better, safety becomes one of the key things. Because capability is pretty straightforward to teach in many cases. And many people already have the capability, right? The motivation, right, might be I get on the scale and I gasp at how much weight I've gained living here in Spain, or my motivation might be I get a running buddy who's waiting down at the corner and I don't want to disappoint my running buddy, or it might be signing up for a 5K race and wanting to be in shape for it, or it might be any number of things. Those are pretty straightforward. The idea of safety, though, is much less straightforward because it's really about, can I risk trying something new or different? Right. So a lot of so you see this with a lot of people who are like, okay, I want to start going to, I want to get in shape. I want to start going to the gym. But the gym feels like a very unsafe place because there's people there who know what they're doing. There's all these mirrors, and if I'm new there or I don't feel good about my body, the issue of safety may trump the issues of capability and motivation. It's too scary to do it. Or if I have to change the way I talk in meetings, all of a sudden, like the way I talk in meetings is I'm very brash. I'm a quick thinker, and I just tell people I don't like to waste time. And if somebody says something I think is a bad idea, I'm just going to cut them off, shut them down right away so we can get on to the important business. And somebody comes to me and says, look, the way you're behaving is damaging your team. People are scared of sharing their ideas. People are deferring to you without thinking. And while you're very smart, you're not smarter than all of us put together. And, and in addition, you need those other people to do the things that you're telling them to do. And our morale is down, and we actually have some risk of turnover and flight here. And we need you to change. And that person says, okay, I can not interrupt. I have the capability of not interrupting. I can keep my mouth shut. I have the motivation. But in that moment, when somebody says something and I think, oh God, that's just going to take us way off track. We're already behind here. I get a feeling in my body that it feels scary not to interrupt. There's some prediction that if I just let that go, who knows where it's going to end up. The people are going to be doing the wrong thing. Chaos is going to break out. There's going to be anarchy. Nobody's going to get anything done. And that fear can override my intellectual brain knowledge that, okay, there is a different way to do things. And so a very gross simplification of what goes on is this nice little picture which shows, first of all, the fearful input. So in this case, a person's looking at a spider, and you can see the blue arrows go from the spider to the eyeballs to what's called the visual thalamus, which is a clearinghouse. Like it takes in things from the eyes and then says, okay, let's prioritize, let's triage this. It's because like right now, if your eyes are open, you're looking at a whole bunch of things that you're not paying attention to. So if I just lift my eyes from the screen, I see the camera, I see the window, I see the return air vent needs to be vacuumed, right? None of that is helpful to me as I'm here leading a masterclass. So the visual thalamus kind of has to, be the switchboard operator. The first place it sends it to is the amygdala. And the amygdala is this tiny little almond-shaped region of the brain that processes threat. And you'll notice that the yellow arrow from visual thalamus to amygdala is actually shorter than the blue arrow from the visual thalamus to the visual cortex. And the visual cortex is where your brain says, oh, spider, right? Because when you think about it, we're not actually looking at reality. We've created maps. So because it would take too long to everything we look at, we're just looking at individual pixels, and we'd have to make sense of it and say, right, think the way a baby looks at the world. The baby doesn't understand faces. Baby doesn't understand the difference between its hand and not its hand. So everything has to be learned. But once we learn it, once we have a vocabulary of, oh, that's a spider, then the visual cortex can register and go, oh, it recognizes the pattern and says spider. But before we're even aware we've seen the spider, the amygdala has already triggered the green arrows down the brainstem, down the spinal cord, into our nervous system to prepare us for whatever it is. And the reason this system is faster than our actual ability to perceive what we see is because it saves lives. So if you are too scared of spiders or anything, if you're too scared, that's almost never going to kill you. If you're not scared enough, that could very easily kill you. You want to pet it, right? You see a car coming down the street and you're standing in the road and you're like, oh, look at those headlights getting bigger and bigger. The fearful input goes into the eyes and it hits the amygdala before it hits the visual cortex, because it's more important for the amygdala to decide, is this a threat, than for our eyes, for our brains to go, oh, I recognize that. So it could be a spider. It could be a person waving to us from across the street. It could be the look on someone's face. It could be the tone of someone's voice. So all of this input can make its way either through the visual thalamus or the auditory thalamus into the amygdala, which is to say, we're actually not responding to what's in front of us, but we're responding to our history. Another way to say it is it's the living past. We're not perceiving the territory, we're perceiving our map of the territory. When somebody gives you a look, your brain is going to search its memory banks and say, what does that remind me of? Does that look remind me of safety or threat? Does it remind me of positivity or negative? When I was 5 years old, I was scratched by the neighbor's Jack Russell Terrier. And for years, I was scared of all dogs. You know, that Jack Russell Terrier was a little jerk. Like he would jump up and on people, and I was wearing shorts, and I remember like it came down and I had scratches down my leg and a little blood. But there were plenty of really mellow, nice dogs that would never do that. But I had created a map called dog. And so when my brain saw dog, it saw fearful input, and the amygdala would raise my heart rate, make my breathing shallow, and make my vision would narrow, and a whole bunch of things would happen so that I could deal with the threat. Now, there's a couple of different ways to deal with threat, and this is the defend half of there's a defend, discover axis. So if you picture the line in the middle between defend and discover as being much longer. So whenever we're awake, we are on this continuum somewhere between defending and discovering. And there's some very clear binary differences between them. So in defend, our principal job is to avoid threat. When we're in defend, our actions become very predictable because the part of our brain that then lights up is this lower part down here, the limbic system. It's not the top part above the eyes, the prefrontal cortex, that has all sorts of ideas, because we want our threat avoiding responses to be very predictable. We don't want to have 101 different ways to deal with a spider, from reading it poetry to dancing to doing a push-up to drawing an architectural rendering of the Sistine Chapel. We just want to be like, okay, spider, run away or hit it with a shoe. Right? Our thinking tends to be rigid, again, because our amygdala thinks we don't have the luxury of time. It's not going to be useful to have a whole bunch of options here. We're just going to stick to a very small palette of possibilities. And very often when we're under threat, and if you've ever had what's called an amygdala hijack, where the threat feels so overwhelming that you end up acting in a way that you later regret and you don't quite understand. You lose control. You may have lost control, but your amygdala got all the control. And there's only one possibility here: to get into that fight, or to slam the door and stay in the room, or to start crying, or whatever the response is that the amygdala has decided is most likely to get you out of this alive. You become very closed-minded to environmental stimuli and to ideas from other people. And the two main emotions in defend are scared or angry. So if you've heard of fight or flight, angry is fight, scared is flight. And that's an entire pattern of a nervous system that has perceived a threat. And it's not our choice. Going back to this hypothalamus, and to the amygdala. We don't decide how we respond initially to a fearful input. The body does that. When somebody says something that makes us go into defend mode, we're not making that choice. Our conscious is not a character flaw. It is a neurological occurrence, a phenomenon. Now, we can do things about it beforehand and we can do things about it right after that occurs, but the initial movement into defend or towards defend is not a conscious decision in the moment. Compare that to when we're in discover mode. And you could think of a scientist, a eureka moment, or a child like exploring a meadow, or someone just feeling good going out into the world and like going to a party and feeling really like they belong and they're safe and it's fun. So the main orientation at this point is opportunity seeking. What's out there? What's good? The brain processes here are creative because when we're seeking opportunity, very often it's novel. So if you think about our ancestors from hundreds of generations ago coming across a new type of food, a new route, let's be creative and flexible and open-minded about it. And very often the discover is related to being socially connected. Now, we can certainly be in discovery mode by ourselves, like the child playing in the meadow, but they're still socially connected to butterflies and ants on logs and trees and grass. They don't feel cut off from the world and they don't feel cut off from any beings around them. And so the discover mode is a socially connected mode. We are engaged in the world and not protecting ourselves from it. This is evolutionarily determined. That this is how we're hardwired. So an example I could give is, let's imagine a rabbit is in the garden and blissfully eating some lettuce and there's a carrot top and just totally in discover mode, right? Just looking around. So what else, what is there? And all their energy is going to, okay, what else could I eat here? Is that radish going to be good? Ooh, there's a bell pepper. I think I can get up on my hind legs and reach it, right? In opportunity seeking, creative, flexible, and open-minded. Then all of a sudden it catches whiff of a fox and its brain instantly builds up the fox to take up all its mental space. Because imagine that rabbit could stay in discover mode when the fox came. That rabbit would become part of the fox. The rabbit would not survive. So it's a biologically inherent mechanism is when we are under threat to survive it, we move into defend mode. Get out of there. If I can't run away, I might have to work up my organism to fight. But in general, most of the time, fear is the emotion that's going to help me avoid the threat, get away. And when the danger has passed, the rabbit has a really good ability to get back into discover mode. And after the rabbit knows that there's no more fox around because they can't smell a fox, you don't see them like freaking out about it and having flashbacks. Humans can do that. We are the rabbits who can carry the fox around with us all the time because we have language, because we have conceptual memory, because we have metaphor and imagery. So for us, we can be scared of spiders even when there are no spiders around. We can be scared of spiders when we see a movie about spiders, arachnophobia. We can be scared of spiders when there's a shadow in a corner of the room that may turn out to be a breadcrumb. So that is my introduction to why it's important, what we have to do when we want to have dreaded conversations. By definition, the dreaded conversation is almost always going to move somebody into the red, into the defend. And at that point, there's no possibility for creative problem solving. So our first job in preparing for a really important conversation, which now I'm going to call an uplift or an uplifting conversation, because we're trying to help someone do something in a better way. Our first job is to make sure that we get them and ourselves into discover, into the green. So I have a couple of exercises, and we can just do these together. All right, the first exercise is to, before we can try to affect someone else's neurology, is to make sure our own, that we are in discover. And what I've discovered is when I try to force myself into discover mode, it doesn't work. If I'm really angry about something or scared about something, that I can't just like say affirmations and mantras and sit in cross-legged bliss poses and immediately go into discover, into joy, happy, kumbaya. The pathway that I want to share is to, I call this becoming your own ally, because what we're really trying to do is shift our perspectives and shift how the other person sees us. If they see us as coming in as a critic, they're going to be in defend mode. And what we want to do is come in as an ally, as a helper, as a collaborator, as a partner. So the exercise is starting with, what is your judgment about this person? What are your what are your feelings when you make that judgment? Like, we don't have to be polite here, especially if you're doing this on your own. I know we're in a public forum here, so you might want to be a little polite, but it's not necessary. Kind of just to really get a handle and let it hang out. I am so mad at them. I think they're so stupid. What the F are they doing? Why? So that level of judgment and feelings. Take a moment right now, if you can, either to jot down some notes or just think about, I'll give you a minute to like really get in touch with reasons inside you that are making this, that have made this a dreaded conversation. What are the judgments and how do they make you feel? All right, anybody got something to share?
Yes, I'm reluctant to be specific
Sure.
and you
Sure.
because I don't want this in any way to be able to identify the individual.
Good.
So I'm trying to think of other individuals and other situations that might.
Sure. What you could bring to this is simply like a word like furious or terrified or confused.
Surprised. I'm surprised that the individual is aware of what he's doing, doesn't really care, and show a very good life.
Okay, so I'm gonna push things a little bit because surprised is way too happy for me. So like shocked and disappointed.
Exactly. And that's much better.
Okay, good. You're a nice guy. I'm gonna bring out the devil on your shoulder. But no, but these are feelings. Like, because there's a judgment. Like, how could he be so stupid? How could he be
Right?
so irresponsible? Are you scared for that person or for other people that this might
Yeah,
affect?
I'm scared for his family.
Scared for his family. Yeah, I'm shocked, I'm disappointed, I'm scared. So these are bringing these emotions and leading with these emotions are going to, you will be the fox. If someone comes to you and all of their energy, I don't care what they've been taught to say, if their energy is, I am shocked at you, Jim, I'm disappointed in you, and I'm terrified for what you're going to do to your family. Can you feel, right? What starts happening?
I was thinking irritated, disgusted, I'm tired. Not even tired. I'm exhausted by just the repetitiveness of what I'm deeming as immaturity.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay. Great. And so so irritated and disgusted are like very evocative. When I hear you say I'm exhausted at their immaturity, it's like, how could they're so inconsiderate? How could they do this to me?
Yeah,
So I'm almost here, there's almost like I could hear what could be victimhood. Like,
yeah,
they're doing this. I'm the victim here. They're right. And is there any fear?
yeah. Of the backlash, of the lack of responsibility, that they're the victim because I'm not understanding and it's my fault, not them, all that.
Okay, so there's defensiveness in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So, we have to do something with these negative emotions. Right. And so here's the thing that changed this all for me when I started working on this for myself is that the negative emotions are the opposite of our equal and opposite of our care. So it's almost like you dig a hole and next to the hole is a pile of dirt. They're the same size. So we feel these negative emotions because something we care about is at stake. And so the sentence is the reason I'm blank, the negative emotion, angry, frustrated, scared, disappointed, is because I care about blank. So if the negative emotions are the pile of dirt, let's now look at the whole. And that's the whole is what you care about, what matters to you. And it could be outcomes, like I want this to happen, I want the thing to happen, or it could be values. I value this, I value honesty, I value trust, I value responsibility, compassion for others. I value self-control, right? So all of our negative emotions exist because of something that we care about. So to give you guys a minute to complete that sentence. The reason I'm, and choose the word, the negative emotion word or words, say, I care about the well-being of his family.
That's right. I care about his well-being as well.
Okay. Okay, so take a moment and feel that because that's the opposite side of all those negative. The only reason you're shocked, disappointed, scared is because you care. So that's what I would write down because the reason I'm scared, angry, disappointed, shocked is because I care about this person and I care about their family and I want them to be well and I want them to thrive and I want them to be happy and I want them to be together. So that's where I want you to marinate. It's hard to remember those feelings when we are ourselves in the grip of the anger, the fear. The reason is that especially anger and judgment, which is where we come from, is a very safe emotion because it's putting things out there. I'm so mad at you for what you're doing. And it helps us not feel what's underneath it, which is care, compassion, fear that are much more vulnerable. They're harder to feel for many of us. And in our society, especially, it's easier to be angry than to be soft. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, so the anger is the initial reaction. If we don't do this work, that's what's going to come across. The judgment, the I am better than you. I know more than you what you're doing, which is the thing was going to stop you. Like me, I don't know. I'm not God. I'm not in a position to judge whether this person's doing the right thing. It's none of my business. And tuning in to your own softness, your own caring, your own desire for this person and their family to be well is the same thing, but a completely different energy. Malachi, do you have a completion of that sentence? The reason I'm blank is because I care about blank.
The reason I am disgusted is because I care about them and their future and the shared investment that we have, as I will say it.
Okay. So yeah, there's something in it for both of you here.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
And you can picture them without this behavior or without this problem.
Mhm.
Picture them thriving in the future.
Mhm.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
Impossible. That's how it feels.
Uh-huh. Right. So if you can't go there, you can't go there. But to picture, you can wave a magic wand. And again, there's this, it doesn't work for everybody,
Yeah, sure. People
right?
like
Yeah. So now take a couple of breaths, pay attention to those breaths and notice what goes on in your body as you get in touch with this positive intention and appreciate it. So what happens? What do you notice?
makes me feel like an idiot.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You don't think it's possible?
I guess that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's not think about the outcome in terms of what you're going to do. Just pay attention to your own caring about these people, whether or not you have no control over what they do, right? We can have a conversation.
No,
You could have it, you could not have it. Let's leave that aside for now. Just notice your own caring and just let that inform your body. Notice what it feels like to pay attention to. I really care about these people. I wish them well. I want them not to suffer. I want them to be at peace and thriving. And see what that does to the fox.
you're not going to turn me into a vegetarian. Put it,
Ah,
I understand.
I think for me, it's I've been harboring and trying to navigate those strong, easy emotions for so long that it makes me emotional to think that things could be different. That there's a that in the ignorance that there is innocence, and that they're struggling with something that if they could get to the point where they could recognize that they have the power and the choice to overcome it without blaming everybody else, then they just have the capacity for the life that, they dream of. And so it makes me emotional to consider that that's such a simple but not easy thing as making different choices would bring about the life that they truly say they desire.
yeah, yeah. And I want to slow you down here because you've jumped ahead to the next step
Yep.
without knowing what it is. You're clearly advanced. I want to invite you to just marinate in your own goodwill without considering if it's possible, without considering what it would take. Just recognizing and letting your body feel what it's like to notice your wishes for their happiness. Since you mentioned God a couple of times, I'm going to put it in religious terms that I understand. Your intentions, think of them as a blessing for this person. And what happens in your body, your sensations, when you bring your attention to your blessing for them?
Feel like my heart is softening towards them.
Mm, great. That's all we're looking for here. Because we want to come at them with our strong negative emotions, and we know that's going to trigger their run rabbit or their bear, depending on who they are. They could run away or attack us back. When you feel your heart soften, when you feel you're caring, then we are giving out signals that are much more likely to get past their amygdala and not see us as the threat. And this could take time. We know we're doing this in triple time here for the purposes of the masterclass. But to really spend the time is incredibly useful before you jump into the actual, what am I going to say to them? So coming from this place with this energy already hugely improves the odds that they're going to be open to even beginning the conversation. Because now you really are coming in as an ally, as a friend, as a helper, and not as a critic. We got one more thing to do before we can come up with the language we're going to use to initiate a request for a conversation. And that is, now that you are in connection with your own positive intentions, you're going to play a game and imagine positive intentions. So they could be doing the dumbest, meanest, most awful thing in the world. To them, it makes sense. Their brain is predicting that this thing that they're doing is going to produce the least suffering. So, what are some values and outcomes that might be leading them to behave the way they are? Take a minute to just play an imagination game. What could they possibly be thinking in terms of, this is actually the way I want to be or the way I have to be? I don't have a choice. The alternative is worse. What might the function of this behavior be for them? Jim, I understand it might be impossible to speak specifically about that because of your concerns about a public forum. I'm wondering if anything just jumps to mind that you want to just keep to yourself.
I've gotten away with it in the past or some of the behavior.
Uh huh.
How it started is possibly I can't meet my obligation, so I'll ignore it. has become a habit.
I don't want to get into the specifics, but you said if someone's engaging in behavior that's not honest, but there is some potential gain. If they get away with it, something positive happens. So I'm just imagining, okay, this is how I provide for my family by doing this illegal thing. Or nobody thought I would amount to anything. And maybe I'm dyslexic and I did terribly in school, but here's something I'm good at. And this feels really good and I'm getting away with it. And you can turn those into, I'm supporting my family. I'm actually taking care of my responsibilities in a certain way. And it feels good to be good at something. So I'm imagining that. I have no idea if it has any relevance, but I'm trying to model like how I would think about someone who's breaking the law in some way.
Okay. How about borrowing money and not paying it back?
Uh-huh. Okay. So
Not borrowing from them. This is borrowing from friends and family. I didn't pay it back because I didn't have the money. But at
yeah,
the same time, there's no feeling of remorse. There's no attitude of it'll never happen again.
yeah, yeah. Might say these are acts of desperation.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do those, then something worse would happen.
And he did something was honest. He spent a little time in jail, so he knows what happens depending upon the legalities of the person with whom he's dealing. So
So if you asked him, what do you think he might say? If you could like truth serum or give him MDMA, there's no defensiveness. Right? And he's like, so why do you do this? Why do you borrow from people knowing you're not going to pay it back and keep doing it?
say, I guess he would say it got started and it snowballed. Couldn't figure out any other way to get out of it.
Can't get out of it. It's like I turned into Bernie Madoff. I can't stop now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where whatever it was, at some point you're going to have to deal with it, but you're procrastinating dealing with it? This may be total BS, right? We have no idea, but something occurred to you. And all we're trying to do here is soften your view of this person. We're not trying to get it. We're not trying to guess it. We're not trying to be clever, but something that will say, okay, like this is a possibility. This person is in over their head. They made a mistake. It became a slippery slope. And now they don't know what to do. And they're too scared to come to you and say, all right, I'm imagining communication's been cut off. They're not talking about it. They're not saying, hey, that money that you borrowed, I want you to know I'm working on getting it back to you. That's their dreaded conversation. And they're procrastinating it because they don't want to feel what they would have to feel.
We have 21 days to see how that turns out.
So that's all. That's the only place I want to get you to have some sort of wiggle room for that other person. There might be something positive or something understandable in what they're doing. It might make sense to them. Just, okay, I made this mistake and now I'm just going to keep quiet and it's going to compound, but I can't face it.
So what you're saying is empathy is the answer?
I'm saying that empathy is a
Oh,
useful strategic tool here to be able to get into the conversation. Malachi, you got anything?
Can you just reiterate the question so I can make sure I got the answer?
Yeah. What's a possible positive intent behind their actions? Right. So what outcomes and values are mattering to them that might be leading them to behave the way they are? Like, how does their behavior make sense to them? And it could be that they want something or that they're so terrified of something that this is the least bad option.
I came out just fine. That is their reasoning.
I came out just fine. And so
Out just fine, and I don't really need to change. I don't know what the problem is. This is
okay.
I don't know why
Yes.
you see it as a problem. I'm fine,
So they're doing this. I'm reading between the lines. It might be a parenting behavior.
among other things.
Okay. So if they're parenting and they like this, I'll use an example of just again making things up so you don't have to disclose anything personal. parent who spanks their child, hits their child. And I know a lot of parents who like work for me. I like who I am, and I would have turned out as a real rapscallion if I hadn't been disciplined right. And so I'm going to do that for my children. So there you can see very clearly a positive. Here's why I do this. Is there any so right now, is there any space in your mind where you can look at that behavior and say that it makes sense to them?
I can say that it makes sense to them, except that they don't really believe they come out fine because it's like it depends on the conversation, it depends on the day.
So might it be like, look, this is the best I can do.
Yeah, there's
Right.
so much contradiction at times where I believe this way, and then the next day it's because of this that I'm this way, and
I'm so conflicted and confused because this is the skill set, this is the habit that I have. This is
Mhm.
what comes out under stress. And some part of me knows this is not right. Some part of me knows that I'm passing on intergenerational trauma, and some part of me doesn't think I could do any other way, and at least I survived.
Mhm.
Right? Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, we don't have to get it right. We're just trying to tenderize. First, we tenderized ourselves. Oh, I'm really in touch with why this matters to me and why I might risk this conversation. And then, like, we look at them, and so, oh, there's stuff I don't understand,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially if I'm surprised, I'm shocked, I'm irritated, I'm disgusted. All of those are synonyms for I don't understand. I couldn't do that. Knowing what I know, being who I am, I couldn't behave that way. I don't understand how they behave that way, right? And we can say that two different ways. We can say the way I just said it as a judgment, I don't understand. We can also say it once we've leavened it with that empathy, that strategic empathy, Jim, we can then say, I don't understand. And that becomes a very humble, curious place to be because now it means we can enter into a conversation in which we are going to learn. They are going to be the experts on themselves rather than us being the expert telling them how they need to be. So, last bit is the asking permission formula. And it's very simple. We say, hey, do you have a minute to talk? If it's someone you're passing, or hey, I'd like to talk to you, or hey, could we get together and have lunch? Or then you say what you want. I want you and your family to really thrive, or I want you to feel secure and safe, whatever comes up. And I'd like to talk to you about that. I would love for your family to really be joyful in each other's company and be in peace and harmony. I'd like us all to be really happy when we see each other as a group. Everybody's happiness in this group really matters to me. Would you be willing to have that conversation with me? Does that make sense? As the opening goal here again is to move them from red to green.
Right.
Right? To let's discover, let's look for carrots together. Let's explore the garden. Let's look for the good stuff instead of, right? It really matters to me that you not be a lying, cheating, dishonest, right? Boom,
Right.
right? But when you think about what you care about, I care about the family's welfare. I really want us to really be able to help each other out, trusting way. I want us to be able to be there for each other. And I think you could be key. I think you're a big part of that. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about that? And again, it might work, it might not. But this, to me, this is the opening that does the most useful things with our neurology to make it likely that the person would be interested in having that conversation. You're coming across as safe, you're coming across as an ally, you're stating a positive future goal that you framed as something that they want as well as what you want. You're doing it as a we, and you're asking permission in a very respectful way. So I'm going to close it there and invite final thoughts. If there's anything in particular that you found useful or a highlight that you'd want to speak into the group.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in. I really appreciate the opportunity to just be honest with myself about how I'm feeling.
Mm. What did that do for you?
It made me stop being so selfish. Like I said, it's really emotional because I really don't want, I feel like in order to protect myself, I've had to put on a face that nobody else gets to see. And so I've literally felt like I've had to armor myself. And
Mm.
so being willing to take down that armor, even for that moment, it was very vulnerable.
Mm.
And it just shows me that it made me realize how much healing I still have to do, perhaps before this can take place, but that the onus is on me
Uh-huh. Yeah.
to change, not on them.
Yeah. And part of that, especially if you have one thing that can happen is we could have a history with people that we've had failed attempts to solve this problem with.
Right.
Right? And that we've come in as critics because that's natural. And one way to both overcome that and to gain momentum is to lead with that. Say, "Hey, I've really been coming at you hard about this in ways that I think have not been helpful and you have not enjoyed and have maybe driven you away. And I really want to come at this in a completely different way. And I hope you forgive me for the ways I've been in the past and give me a chance to try again." Just strategically leading with your own vulnerability can help the other person begin to mirror that and be willing to look at themselves. Because if you're coming in totally differently than you used to come in, it might take them a while to trust that. It's the demonstration of your vulnerability that you are willing to feel things and you're willing to take responsibility that you're actually looking for in them. So you being the leader in the conversation can be very helpful.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jim, any final thoughts from you?
Again, look at the situation less judgmentally and help in a way that's more supportive than critical.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. And there's a lot more to be done in the conversation. Once you have the opening, then you're in the game. So I wish both of you luck. These are really powerful, poignant relationships and conversations and potential for good and for positive influence. So my wish for you is that this goes well. You can be in touch with me if you want to explore it further. I really appreciate and I value both of you helping out with this learning experience so that other people are going to learn from it as well. Uh, and so I'm happy to continue the conversation offline if that would be helpful.
Very nice seeing.
Yes, you too. All right. Jim, Mama Kai, thank you both. Thank you, everybody on the call and everybody in recording land. Before we go, I just want to mention that this masterclass is sponsored by my coaching and consulting practice. And there's a lot of cases in organizations where dreaded conversations aren't happening to the detriment of the organization. So if anyone is watching, listening, and you're thinking, boy, it would really help if we could learn how to talk to each other in ways that brought out our best, then I would love for folks to reach out to me, and you can do so at my website, askhowie.com. So with that, I sign off and thank you all. Have a fabulous North Carolina day, and we'll see each other again soon.